In the previous module, we talked about using expected value as a decision criterion. Expected value is a decision criterion that incorporates probabilities. Today in this module, we are going to discuss some commonly used decision criteria that do not utilize probability. So why do we want to talk about other types of decision criteria? This is because expected value does not capture risk, while most decision makers are sensitive to the notion of risks. We will discuss a couple of decision criteria and discuss how good they are. I want to start with the concept of dominance. If a decision alternative is clearly superior, we call it dominant decision alternative. Let's look at an example. Suppose in a decision analysis problem, we have three decision alternatives, D1, D2, and D3. In addition, regardless of which decision alternative we choose, we are faced with an uncertain event that has three possible scenarios, S1, S2, and S3. We report the payoff for each decision alternative under each scenario. Now, we can see that no matter which outcome of the uncertain event occurs, D1's payoff is better than D2's payoff. Therefore, we say that D1 dominates D2, and we can eliminate D2 from considerations. Now, let's try the same concept with the following example. Suppose that we are choosing between two games. In these two games, I will toss a coin. If you choose game 1, then you will receive $7 if the toss results in a head, and you will lose $7 if the toss results in a tail. Similarly, if you choose game 2, then you will receive $8 if the toss turns out to be a head, and lose $4 if the toss turns out to be a tail. There are two possible scenarios in the uncertain event of tossing a coin. If S1 occurs, we see that game 2's payoff is better than game 1's payoff. If S2 occurs, then game 2's payoff is still better than game 1's payoff. As a result, game 2 dominates game 1. The next decision criteria I want to talk about is the optimistic decision criterion, or sometimes we call it Minimax. When a person uses this decision criterion, he is assuming that the best scenario will always occur, and he is optimistic. Let's look at the example. The decision maker is choosing between two decision alternatives, D1 and D2. Again, there is some uncertainty that will result in different payoffs, and the uncertainty has three states of nature, S1, S2, and S3. If the decision maker uses the Minimax decision criterion, then he will first find the maximum payoff for each decision alternative, which is 7 for the first alternative and 8 for the second alternative. Then, this optimistic decision maker will choose the alternative with the highest maximum payoff. Because A is greater than 7 in this case, he will choose D2. In other words, the decision maker chooses the best among the best cases. However, this optimistic approach is not always desirable. Consider the following example. Which decision alternative is more desirable to you? If we use the Minimax decision criterion, we will see that D1's maximum outcome is 9, and the D2's maximum outcome is 10. As a result, we will choose the D2 because 10 is greater than 9. Nevertheless, many people may prefer D1 over D2. This is because there is some chance to lose a lot of money when D2 is selected, even though the maximum outcome for D2 is higher than that for D1. Next, let's try to apply the Minimax approach to the following example. You can pause the video to work on the example on your own, then see if you can reach the same answer as mine. The next decision criteria I want to discuss is a conservative criterion. It is sometimes referred to as the maxi-min decision criterion. When a decision maker uses a conservative or maxi-min criterion, he looks at the worst scenario for each decision alternative first. Then, he chooses the decision alternative that has the best worst scenario. In the example, we first find the minimum or the worst outcome of D1, which is 5. Then, we find the minimum or the worst outcome of D2, which is 2. Because 5 is better than 2, we choose D1 if we use the maxi-min decision criterion. Similar to the optimistic approach, this conservative approach sometimes may not be desirable. If we apply the maxi-min criterion to the following example, we will choose D2. However, many people might prefer D1 over D2 because D1 may have a chance to get a larger payoff, whereas there's only small difference in the two decision alternatives' worst scenarios. Next, let's try to apply the maxi-min approach to select the salary plan for Jim. Again, you can pause the video to work out your answer, then check if you have the same conclusion as mine. The next decision criterion I want to talk about today is the Minimax regret criterion. This approach is to minimize the regret associated with the choice. Regret for a given scenario is the difference between the payoff under your choice and the payoff under the best choice of that scenario. For example, the payoff table for the two decisions under the two states of nature is shown in the slide. To utilize the Minimax regret method, we first want to find out what is the regret for each decision alternative when each state of nature occurs. If S1 occurs, we see that the best decision is to choose D2 because its payoff is the highest. Therefore, there is zero regret for D2. However, if we choose D1 and S1 occurs, then comparing to the D2, there's a $1 regret for choosing D1. Similarly, if S2 occurs, The best payoff comes from choosing D1. Therefore, there is no regret for choosing D1. However, if we choose D2, then compared to D1, we have a $2 regret. Now, we have the regret table, and the maximum regret for D1 is 1. The maximum regret for D2 is 2. Because 1 is smaller than 2, we will choose D1. Next, let's use the Minimax regret method to choose a salary plan for Jim. The first step is to convert the information into regret table. Let us first focus on the scenario where Jim sells 0 homes. In this scenario, Plan 1 gives him the highest salary, which means that he will not have regret if he chooses Plan 1. If he chooses Plan 2, then his regret is 2400 minus 1900, which is 500. If he chooses Plan 3, then his regret is 2400 minus 0, which is 2400. We can then use the same logic and focus on the scenario where Jim sells 1 home. The best salary plan would be Plan 2 in this scenario. Therefore, he has 0 regret for Plan 2. If he chooses Plan 1, then his regret is 2500 minus 2400, which is 100. If he chooses Plan 3, then his regret is 2500 minus 1200, which is 1300. You can then use the same logic to finish the regret table. Then, we see that the Plan 1's maximum regret is 2400, and the maximum regret for Plan 2 is 500. The Plan 3's maximum regret is 1300. Because Plan 2 has the smallest maximum regret, we choose Plan 2.